Before we get into today's episode, I have some breaking news for you. Our glute growth webinar went so well at the end of this last year. And going into 2025, we're going to be offering a lot more webinars. And our first one is going to be in February. You guys are the first to hear about it. It is going to be the fast track to fat loss. And I can't wait for you to join us.
It is going to be awesome. It's going to be free, just like our first webinar was. And we are going to be showing you techniques and strategies that we use with our clients to guarantee they reach their fat loss goals. So this is also going to make sure that you're summer ready, because we're going through this in February to really set you up so you have the tools to make sure that you look your best going into summer. So remember, it is going to be February 5th. Go ahead and mark your calendar. And it is going to be at 1 p.m. EST. There will be a lot more information coming and stuff for you to register, but we wanted to give you guys the first look.
There will be limited seats, so make sure that you secure your spot.
Have you ever felt stuck in your fat loss journey? You're following a plan, you're doing the workouts, you're eating the right foods, but suddenly the scale doesn't move anymore? You wonder, should I change something, or am I maybe just being a little bit impatient? Today, we're going to walk you through a clear step-by-step process to answer that exact question. By the end of this podcast, you'll know whether to stay consistent, adjust the plan, or if additional support is necessary.
As we start a new year, it is so common for everyone to get into a calorie deficit, and it's time to finally lose all the body fat. We wanted to do it in 2024. It didn't happen. So now we're going to do it in 2025. And because that year change, I'm ready.
New year, new me.
Exactly. And what I want to help so dearly with is to not have that person make adjustments so quickly because they're not getting immediate results. And so in making this decision tree, I want to make it very clear of the next best steps. When should you make those changes? Or are you just simply being impatient? And I will say, before we even get into the decision tree, 9 times out of 10, you're just being impatient and you need to stick to the plan. But this decision tree will help tremendously.
Yeah, and they can really think of it as a roadmap as far as where they need to go, or if it is time to tweak the plan. And that's something where if you are a visual learner like myself, then we will have this available in a decision tree for you to truly follow through all of this for our email list. So I'll have the link down below, but I know for me, being able to see the visual decision tree would be a huge, huge help. So if you're not driving or doing something that needs your attention, being able to go and snag that from our email list is going to be a huge help for you.
It's free.
It is free.
Okay. Your fat loss has officially stalled. Your first question you need to ask yourself: has your adherence been more than 90% for the last 14 to 21 days?
So consistency.
Consistency is certainly the first thing to assess. And when looking at that first 14 to 21 days, or the last 14 to 21 days, the reason that this is so important is that if you are only following the plan 50, 60, maybe 70% of the time, it's not a matter of should I make changes? It's more of just actually do what you've set out to do. And if you answer that question that you have not been 90% adherent for the last 2 to 3 weeks, then we need to make some assessments here. We need to see why your adherence has not been at that point, because you're not alone in not having that adherence. I would say a majority of people who are trying to diet have not been adherent for 14 to 21 days. Mm-hmm. So why are you not being adherent? The first thing to look at is going to be, is the plan unrealistic? Are you asking too much of yourself for the current chapter of your life? Are you in a place that you are trying to do cardio every day and eating a significantly less amount of calories than you were previously? Let's say that you were consistently eating 2,500 calories on a day-to-day basis, and you said, I'm starting a deficit on January 1st. I'm going to eat 1,200 calories every day. That's going to be a little bit too drastic, and we have to be more realistic with how we are creating that deficit. And so looking at the game plan would be the first thing. Do we need to make adjustments to the game plan to allow for your adherence to be in a better spot? Are we in a place where you don't have confidence in the game plan, because not having confidence in the game plan is also going to lead to lack of adherence. What we have seen within physique development clients is that the more that we educate, the more that we give the why to the service and the game plan that's in place, the significant improvement in adherence, but also significant improvement in success that comes with it. And so if you feel like you're just guessing and don't know for certain if what you're doing is the right thing, then I would encourage you to reach out to us. We would love to help you create that game plan that's best suited for you and give you that confidence. Would there be a third thing that you would see?
I think it kind of bleeds into that of not feeling confident in the plan is lacking that accountability and support. So if you're doing it alone, and I've shared stats before on this, but it is so unlikely for someone to achieve a plan if they haven't written it down or told someone about it, where your chances of accomplishing a goal can shoot up to 95% if you have created a timeline, you have accountability, and you've put money towards something. So I know I always want the best chance at being able to succeed at something. I mean, if you told me, hey, you can either have a 10% chance or a 95% chance, give me the 95% chance. And so that's something where being able to have that accountability, a plan, and putting financial resources towards something is going to help you. And that support is also going to help within having that confidence in the plan. So even if it's just telling a friend about your goal, that's already going to increase your likelihood of reaching that goal. So having some sort of accountability and support is going to be absolutely huge, because through all of this, when you're asking of, should I adjust the plan, and you're wondering what to do here, like you said, it's not often a factor of like, do I need to change something, but really reflecting on what you're doing and being able to see of like, hey, if I'm not being consistent, the issue isn't the plan, it's the execution. But if I'm realizing even if I execute, this isn't sustainable for me, then that's where, or I don't feel confident in the plan, that's where you need to start asking yourself more and more questions. But it does start with the aspect of adherence and consistency, because those are going to be huge drivers for any sort of progress, whether you're trying to accomplish a business goal, like a fat loss goal, a muscle gaining goal. It is all going to have to come down to consistency and adherence to that goal.
Yes. I would add that a timeline is tremendously important. Not just I'm losing fat until I'm happy with the fat that I've lost. It's like I am losing body fat until this time, and I'm putting all of my focus and effort into this specific thing. And having those timelines will help tremendously, because if it's just in perpetuity, you're not going to have much urgency. You need urgency. You need the accountability. And if you're someone who lacks the trust in yourself to do something, post it on your Instagram story. Take a picture every day, post it on your story.
Yeah.
I promise you, you're going to start wanting to see some progress, as well as being like, well, if I'm going to be posting this, I better start doing something. And I've said this on the podcast a number of times. Like, I'll post things on Instagram solely for that fact of this is going to hold me so much more accountable, because I know there's going to be people that are going to roast me if I don't. And so I'm just going to have to step up to the plate. All right. So,
well, I do want to go real quick on the unrealistic expectations and talking on that a little bit more, because I think that this is one that is so important, because people will go to an extreme or to a drastic because they want to see fast results. But what we really push forward is lasting results, because I'll get on calls with people and they'll be like, well, I did X before. So whether that's Weight Watchers or paleo or carnivore diet or whatever else type of diet that they did, and it worked, I lost 20 pounds. My next question is always, did you keep the weight off? Because success to me isn't just losing the weight, it's being able to keep that weight off. And so I mention that especially within the unrealistic expectations, because you might go into a deficit or into a diet beginning of January and have this huge goal that you want to reach, and you might want to see those results fast, but that's not actually what's going to sustain keeping that physique. And it's also looking at things of, I see a lot of people of like, oh, I want to lose like 20 pounds this month. And it's like for fat loss, we're looking at 0.5 to 1.5 pounds of fat loss per week on average. And so being able to have a realistic expectation, then that's going to set you up instead of just thinking, I haven't lost 20 pounds, I'm a failure. It's like, hey, realistically, I'm going to lose, let's say, 4 or 5 pounds in this month. And so with that, I need to keep that in mind. And then that's going to, again, keeping me staying consistent because my effort has matched my expectations. Because that's the thing with unrealistic expectations is that people end up having like their effort not match, and you have to take some time to reflect. And a huge part of this decision tree is being able to ask yourself questions and be honest about them. But you have to reflect like, hey, if my expectation is this huge outcome, is my effort even matching that? And if it's not, you either need to change your expectation or you need to change your effort. And you need to come to terms with that as well, of being able to reflect on that.
I'm glad you made that point. I think the easiest analogy is looking at your body fat that you've accumulated that you do not desire as a venture into the woods. And if you are trying to lose the body fat, you're wanting to come out of the woods. If you've ventured into the woods 3 miles and that's taken you 2 years to do, for example, why in the world would it take a fraction of the amount of time to get back out? And so if you've accumulated this body fat and you've not prioritized your health and you have not gone to the gym, it's not going to be fixed in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks. Like, we need to really give ourselves a true timeline of realistic expectations to see the real results that you are desiring. And the only person that you're hurting by not having these realistic expectations is yourself. You're putting yourself in a situation where you're creating negative self-talk and beating yourself up on a day-to-day basis and probably moving further away from your goal because you're getting emotional and upset that you're not where you want to be, but it's unrealistic to even think that you could be where you want to be. And so working with someone who has expertise in this space and can walk you through is like having a compass and a guide walking right alongside you back out of the woods so you don't get lost and you can actually have the fastest track back out that you have created for yourself. And so the more that you lean into real support and make a real commitment for yourself, the faster you're going to get to where you want to be. So if you have been adherent at more than 90% for the last 2 to 3 weeks, the next question I want you to ask yourself is, how accurately are you tracking your nutrition and other biofeedback markers like your sleep and your training and your water consumption, your steps? If you have consistently measured those things over the last 90 or over the last 2 to 3 weeks at 90+%, then we'll move on to the next question. If you can honestly answer that question and say, I haven't been 90% adherent, I've been, kind of tracking this thing. I've been tracking my steps some days. I've been tracking my sleep some days. Everything's just kinda. Then go back and answer the questions that we just went through. But if you can answer that question with certainty, then it takes us to our next question.
Low reps is best.
High reps is best.
Fruit is so
it's
good.
Terrible for you.
You should lift heavy.
High reps,
carbs
low
are
weight.
needed.
Keto
Squats
for
are
life.
bad for your
Squats
knees.
are great.
You
for your
should squat ass to
knees over
grass.
toes.
It's fine. It fits my macros.
It's for idiots.
When there are so many mixed messages going around, it's hard to know what you should even do or focus on. But that's exactly where physique development one-on-one coaching comes in. You might have heard of online coaching or even hired a coach before, but we believe in teaching you the why behind what we do while truly taking your life into consideration. We want to train, educate, and empower you to reach your goals and help you to stop spinning your wheels and just finally feel good. And hey, we're here to help you look good too. You need you. Your health is your wealth. So join Physique Development and let us be the last coach you ever need.
Are your clothes fitting looser, or are the pictures that you're taking for check-ins for yourself, are those pictures improving? This is a yes or no. And the reason that this is important for us to highlight is because if your measurements are improving and the visuals are improving, who cares about the scale? If you are looking better and you are feeling better, your clothes are fitting better, who cares if that scale says 134 pounds or 130 pounds? The scale is going to have its ebbs and flows, and that's why we encourage you to weigh yourself every day so that you have that measurement and being able to take the averages. But if you're only getting on the scale once or twice a week and you're beating yourself up because it's up again, it's like, well, you only took a fraction of the stat. There's so many things that go into that scale reading on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis that we have to get more readings. And so if your clothes are fitting better and your pictures are improving, then that takes us to the yes answer here. But I want to start with the no. Mm-hmm. So if your clothes are not fitting better and your pictures are not improving, the next question becomes, we look at the biofeedback. Are you having poor digestion? Are you having high stress? Is your sleep cracky? Mm-hmm. Are you currently is your menstrual cycle taking an impact here? Those things are going to be important for us to highlight.
And I think that within the accuracy of tracking, this is just another thing. And people have heard me say this multiple times, but if you want to see progress, you need to track progress. And I think that a lot of times people think I'm putting effort forward, and so I should see progress. But the only thing you're entitled to is the work itself. And so you're not entitled to see progress just because you're putting work in or you're putting effort forward. But that effort is needed to be able to have the outcome that you desire. And being able to track those variables is so important because I am a health and fitness coach, have been one for almost a decade, coaching other people, working on stuff myself. If I don't track these variables and I try to reflect back, I'll be like, yeah, my sleep was fine and this was fine. But once I actually track the variables, then I'm able to see, hey, actually you didn't get as much sleep as you thought this past week. Also, we have to take into mind that your digestion was wonky these few days and you also had this going on. Where if I'm just trying to relate back to my own memory, I'm sorry, it's not cutting it. And so really being able to track these of not just oh, has my sleep been good? But have you even tracked what is your hours for sleep? Do you know what that looks like on average, how many you're getting? Because what if you're going to bed at 9 p.m., but you are scrolling TikTok for 2 hours, but you're thinking, I'm in bed every night at 9 p.m., so I'm getting 8 hours of sleep. Well, you might actually only be getting 5 or 6 hours of sleep if you stayed up and scrolled TikTok for that amount of time. So that's where tracking these variables can be so instrumental in giving you such clarity, because that's what we see when a lot of people come to us is oh, I've been eating around this amount of calories. All right, track that for the next week. Oh, maybe I haven't been eating around that amount of calories because this feels way different than how I felt these past few weeks. And so that can be so eye-opening of really being able to have that accuracy within tracking. And then I also want to talk about the aspect of literally fuck the scale, is because the past few diets I've done, the scale didn't really move for the first month for me, but my pictures improved and my measurements improved, the way that I looked improved. And that also kept me sane, because if I just relied on the scale, I would have said, this isn't working, I want to give up, or I need to change something. But because I had the variables that I was tracking and could look back on those, then I could see, hey, I am improving, I can stick to the plan. So I take it back to those questions because I want to knit this story together of we've been there personally, and then we've been there thousands of times with our own clients of it's not easy, but it is simple if we boil it down to this decision tree. And by being able to look at it that way, oh, if I can actually see pictures and if I can see measurements, that gives me data to make data-driven decisions instead of the scale isn't moving, I must be messing everything up. And that's how we want you to make decisions, because that's also how we make decisions within our clients to also get them those results time and time again.
If there's one thing to take from this episode, it is that when it comes to your health, you need to make decisions deciding off of data and not your emotions. If you're making decisions for your health off of the emotions that you have in the moment, you're going to be left upset time and time again. When you finally implement the data and let that drive your decisions, finally, you're going to see the results that you want to see. So coming back to the no and experiencing potentially poor digestion, high stress, poor sleep, or menstrual cycle impacts. So let's talk about poor digestion and how this impacts, because when we are recording this right now, we're coming off of Christmas celebrations and family gatherings, and I have client check-ins today. And I'm having a lot of conversations with clients that they're seeing scale fluctuations, and some of them being stressed by that, being thrown off and having emotions because of it, and having to reiterate to them of how much of an impact of having foods outside of their norm, social gatherings, alcohol when they're not normally consuming alcohol. All these things are going to have a impact on the gut that could allow for us to accrue greater inflammatory response, or we could have consumed an excess of calories enough to where we have body fat changes in that time period. It could truly happen. And so, understanding that it is going to have its impact, and it's tremendously important for us to prioritize. We've recorded an in-depth episode on this. Do we know the episode number?
No, but we'll have it linked down below that people can just click on. It'll be easy peasy for them.
Easy peasy. The next factor would be sleep.
Sleep is for the elite.
Sleep is very much so for the elite.
Funny enough, we also have a deep dive episode on this, going over everything within sleep. So instead of exhausting and going through both of those and not being able to cover them as in depth, then we will have both of those of the digestion podcast and the sleep podcast, because we break down everything that you could be seeing in the digestion. We go through a tier list of digestion and what we would recommend with going through it. And for the sleep one, we go through basically a checklist of all the things that you need to keep in mind when it comes to your sleep. So those two are going to be instrumental for you. And if you're listening and you're like, that seems like a lot of work, I'm already listening to this podcast, I don't want to listen to two other podcasts. If you are wanting fat loss and wanting for it to be sustainable and wanting to do it yourself, it is going to take time to figure it out. So if you can't listen to a few resources of free information, you're likely not going to get the results. So these are free, great information that is going to help you. That is our goal with this podcast, is to help you and to provide education in a world full of so much overwhelming information. We want to make it as clear as possible, as accessible as possible, and to be able to present that to you. So if you're like, all right, I'm going at this myself, it is going to take some time, and it is likely going to take some more trial and error, because you might not know exactly what you're doing, or might not know how to analyze the data or collect the data. Where if you are like, okay, I don't want to go through all of that, then that's where you can have someone come in and help you, and help within, like Alex said, coming out of the forest, have the most clear and direct route to get to where you're going.
Absolutely. Are you sick and tired of your glutes not growing? Turning around in the mirror and seeing a board for a booty? I've been coaching for nearly a decade, helping thousands of women reach their goals. The most common goal: grow my glutes. Women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s able to grow their glutes with the guidance of my training programs. And for all this time, I've kept my best glute growth secrets only for my one-on-one clients. And that changes today. We just released our 12-week glute growth program in the PD training app. It is a 4-day program with exercise and volume adjustments every 3 weeks. You can easily access the program through our app and track every single workout. Each exercise will have a detailed video teaching you exactly how to perform each and every movement. And guess what? I am no longer gatekeeping. I'm sharing every single one of my best glute growth secrets inside this program. Because you are awesome and I want you to have this program, I'm going to give you $25 off, making it a fraction of what you spent at Starbucks this past month. Use code POD. The link to purchase will be in the description. Now let's get back to the show. Now, let's say that you do not have the poor digestion, high stress, crappy sleep, and your energy is good. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Speaking through this decision tree verbally and not having the thing to like reference, tougher than I thought it was going to be. Okay, so we're going back to the clothes fitting looser and your pictures are improving. The answer to this is yes. So then the next question I want you to ask yourself: has your average fat loss per week prior to this stall been at an average of 1% of your total body weight? So you've been losing 1% on average per week prior to this. If the answer to that question is yes, then no changes, but you could potentially need to address some of the things that we just talked about within the digestion, stress, and sleep category. If the answer is no, prior to this, you were not seeing the 1% loss of body mass, then my next question for you is going to be: are you maintaining or increasing strength in the gym currently? And this is where we go back to the tidbit of the digestion, stress, and sleep, this is the question that kind of connects this. If you answered no to that, then we come back to this question here. And so if you are maintaining or increasing strength in the gym, this may be the opportunity in which we would lower calories, adjust activity, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But if your answer is no, you're not maintaining or increasing the strength in the gym, then this would be an opportunity for you to adjust your workouts, change the training volume, maybe back off the training frequency, something along those lines to allow for your body to get into a more recovered state so that you're able to maintain or increase your strength again in the gym. And that may kickstart things from a fat loss standpoint. Not saying that lifting weights is going to cause you to lose body fat, but more of what I'm saying is that if you get into a more recovered state and you're not as inflamed, you may see water clear, and now we're seeing more progress within the scale readings that you're trying to see move. So I wanted to give clarity to that. I didn't want it to be a 1-for-1 there. It's more of a trickle down impact. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you answered yes to maintaining and increasing strength in the gym, before I get into that, did you have anything to add so far? Because I feel like I'm just running.
It is difficult to go through a decision tree when it's just talking through. That's why I told people if they are visual like myself, it'll be very helpful to have this up while we're talking through things. But I think that within talking about maintaining and increasing strength in the gym, that also is, are you tracking what you're doing in the gym is an important part there. And being able to look at things where when we're talking about like adjusting your workouts of not just, okay, then I'm just going to go to the next swipe workout I see online and follow that. It's really being able to have a plan of, do I know how much volume I'm doing? So what does it mean to decrease that volume? And how do I go about that? So yes, we're giving some more generalizations here, but that's where I want to dive into a few more of these specifics of questions I want you to think to ask yourself when you're really looking at this to get the best results out of this decision tree.
Well, if they're not tracking their workouts, they wouldn't have gotten past question 2.
But I'm just want to reiterate of like really making sure you even are tracking what you're doing. So some people might be like, oh, I feel like I'm doing the same. And it's like, have you written down what weights you're doing for that to be able to see if you're improving?
This is so infuriating to me. Stop thinking that you're the exception to the rule. Like, stop giving yourself this pass because, well, I saw this one person on social media and she did it this way. So then that means everything else that I've seen doesn't apply. She did it. So then why can't I do it? It's like you should follow the game plan as it's been shown to be repetitively successful and do everything correct. If you find that this one thing maybe works a little bit different for you, great. But in the grand scheme of things, you are not special. Follow the plan and you will have success. Stop trying to, well, because of this, because of that. Just do what is in front of you. Stop making it harder on yourself to get to the place that you want to be. Execute and stop worrying. Yeah. Okay. All right. This is an episode. All right. So now we have gotten to the place of saying we are improving or maintaining the strength in the gym. So then the next question I have for you is that, do you have room to lower your calories or increase your activity without feeling overly restrictive or exhausting?
I think that's that's difference between do you have room to lower your calories or increase activity is one question, but with having the add-on of without it feeling overly restrictive or exhausting, I think is a very important add-on to that. So that it's not like, well, yeah, I can do more, but at what cost? And that's another thing of asking yourself of like, what do I have to give up to get to this point? What is this going to cost me to get to this point? Is it worth the cost? And it very might be. It might be worth the cost to you. It might be worth the trade-off, but you also need to ask yourself that to know. Like for me, if I want to get leaner than I am right now, I know that the cost is going to have less flexibility. Is that little bit leaner worth it to me? Or is it worth the cost to me at this point in my life? I have to make that decision. But that also means that if I decide it's not worth it to have that more structure and less flexibility, then I also can't just wish I could also look leaner. I've already made the decision it's not worth the cost. So now I can't complain that it's not fair, that it's not worth the cost. I now have to accept, oh, I have made it clear it's not worth the cost for me. So I have to now be happy with where I'm at or where my decision has led me to be. So if you don't want to give up certain foods, if you don't want to have to spend extra time in the gym, if you don't want to spend extra time doing cardio, completely fine. But that also means that you can't sit there and be like, why am I not losing weight? Why is my physique not look this way? When you know why, and you have decided I'm not willing to pay that cost. So I am now deciding to stay where I am.
Yes. And I think this is a part of that where you can continuously say that this thing is important to me. This thing is what I want to do. But if your actions continue to show you that you're not moving in alignment with what you're saying is so important to you, that's also a tough pill to swallow. And you have to be honest with yourself in that scenario too, of like, yo, I would love for this to happen, but my actions aren't showing it. And so do I need, what needs to change for my actions to improve? Or do I need to better align my expectations of like, yeah, this is what I'm having to deal with, or I'm not going to get this one thing at this current time, and maybe at a different chapter I will. But yeah, I thought that was the best way to frame that question. So in response to that question, we have really three options here. So the first option is that you can decrease your calorie intake. And so we're looking at the average intake of the week. And I think a good place to decrease to is going to be between 5 and 7% of that intake. And so if you are to decrease, I would give another 2 to 3 weeks with that lower intake before you are to make adjustments. And if you are to get to the end of the next 3 weeks after making this adjustment, go directly through this decision tree again. And if you find yourself at the same exact outcome, then you drop again. But I would not do it any sooner. It'd be okay if you did it later, but I probably wouldn't do it any sooner than the 2 to 3 weeks. And be truthfully as honest as you possibly can be with yourself when going through the decision tree. Because if you half-heartedly answer these and you just continue to tear down your food, and then you're like, well, I used the decision tree. I did everything I possibly could have. It's like, no, you didn't. And now you're just continuing to lie to yourself. And it's just a terrible narrative to have in your head. Stop lying to yourself. Just be honest. Like stop making up some random narrative in your head. And
you know how you can be more honest? Looking at data.
Yeah.
So you're not driven by your emotions.
Exactly. And I'm not even talking to anyone in particular right now. I'm talking
to an archetype.
This is emotion from having these conversations over and over again for a decade. And the answers are right in front of your face. And it's just a matter of executing as well as working with the right people to get you to where you want to be. All right. Option number 2, if you are not wanting to decrease your calories, you feel like where your calories are currently at is as low as you would like to take them, and that's fine. Then at that point, you can increase your daily step count by about 2,000, I think is a good place to make a nudge up. If you wanted to try and do the approach of adding in steady state cardio rather than having a daily tracked step goal, it would be something where you would want to have an extra 600 to 700 calories of deficit added for your week, and that would be dispersed through the steady state cardio. It's going to be easier for you just to take the 2,000 step bump in your day rather than trying to figure out when you're going to get those cardio sessions in. Again, you can do it. You certainly can, but the steps are going to be easier. Now, our third option to this is that the answer is no. Like you don't have the space to lower your calories more or increase your activity. It is going to feel restrictive. It is going to feel exhausting. And at that point, this would be the perfect opportunity to reach out to Physique Development for us to help you get back to your calorie maintenance or assess why things are so restrictive or why things are so exhausting and you're not seeing the weight loss that you want to see. This is what we deal with every single day. And we fix these problems, whether it be from a hormonal perspective, it be digestive, it be the game plan in general. This is where we come in to help so tremendously. And so that finishes my decision tree.
Yeah. And I think that within those two options that we talked about of it being a yes of the calorie intake or the cardio, I think it's important to note it doesn't say both in the same ones. It's either decrease your food or increase your step/cardio. And I find that a lot of people, when it comes to fat loss, try to do too much too fast. And it's like, well, let me add cardio and decrease food. Okay, now you've just created a much bigger deficit than you intended to. And the mistake in that, you might be like, well, I might see results faster. You may see results faster at the beginning, but the only place to go is down. And so let's say you make too big of a cut and too big of a deficit, your body is going to adapt to that. You are going to need to create a bigger deficit to keep losing fat. Whereas if you go with a smaller deficit, are able to lose the weight, you can do a little bit more, and see better results with that. And it's also important to note that since there are two ways to create a deficit of eating less food or moving your body more, recognizing the one of moving your body more takes time to do and it takes time to recover from. So if you are in a place where your sleep is already kind of on your wit's end and you aren't getting in enough food to recover and to recover in those ways, then maybe adding in more cardio or more movement isn't the best answer for you. Or if you're someone who you're just like, I'm short on time, I don't have time to do more movement, then being able to do food is going to be the better option. But we always like to give our clients that option in general. Whenever I go into a deficit, I ask people, would you rather have less food or would you rather move more? Because for me, I normally answer I'd rather move more because I have a very sedentary job and there are different ways that I can sneak in movement throughout the day. And so I'd rather move more than eat less food, especially if I've already had my meals nailed down. I don't want to switch those up. Then we can create the deficit that way. So I think it's just important that you don't need to do both at the same time and create an even bigger deficit than you intend to. And again, if you're not tracking variables, then you're not going to catch that. And you're going to just think, I need to be doing more. Why am I not seeing weight loss? Where that's what we get from a lot of our clients or people that before they were our clients is that they were doing so much and they're doing everything but not losing weight. And we're able to really scale back and see these are the reasons you're not losing weight is because you tried to do too much at once, which then felt overwhelming, which then you weren't able to stay consistent with, which then you weren't able to adhere to, which then you weren't able to see results. So that all accumulates as we go through this to really be able to be mindful of how this is set up and realizing, oh, it's not saying to do both. Oh, I need to ask myself this question before I even get to this question so that you can really see our thought process from working with so many clients and navigating through so many different situations. Like it's not just, oh, someone who's in their 20s and is straight out of college and yada, yada. It's moms, it's working moms, it's night shift workers, it's people in healthcare, it's people working 80-hour weeks that are trying to figure this shit out. And we have been able to figure it out for a large array of people. So this is how we even go through it for our clients. This is literally how we work through our thought process when a client's not seeing results. Or they're not seeing what we think they should be seeing. We go through our own questions to ask ourselves to ensure that they're getting where they need to go.
Now, you may be listening to this and saying, Alex, what about diet breaks or refeeds? And I tried to incorporate that into this decision tree, and this decision tree got a lot larger. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a little bit too much to try and fit into one episode. And so if you are interested in talking about diet breaks and refeeds directly, then shoot us a message on Instagram, myself or Sue. And if enough people ask for it, then we will record another episode to talk about that as well.
Mm-hmm. And before we wrap this up, is there anything else, because you've been talking to people recently in their check-ins, and obviously we are surrounded by people wanting to lose weight all the time. Is there anything else about fat loss, whether like thinking back to your own personal times that you've gone through fat loss journey that you think would be helpful for anyone to hear?
That would be more helpful than what we've shared thus far. I think that the strongest points, if I was to just give more of a key points, would be having the strong timeline, having targets in terms of how much weight are you planning to lose or wanting to lose on a week-to-week basis, and having the strong trackables, like really having data drive all the decisions that are being made and not allowing for scale readings solely to be your driver, as well as catching a crappy angle of yourself walking past a mirror or trying on a pair of pants in the morning or a shirt that doesn't fit or feel right. And then that being the core of like, I have to make a change today. I have to do more cardio today. I have to decrease my food. Those would be the big drivers of what I would encourage everyone to do.
So patience, young Kimosabi.
Patience, something I'm not great at, but honestly, having successful fat loss teaches you patience. And if I don't know if there's a greater tool in life than having patience and control of your emotions, and dieting helps you do that.
Yeah, it does, because everyone's looking for something quick. And this really shows you of, hey, to get the result I want and keep it, which are two different things, I do have to be patient because it's not all going to happen at once. Well, do not forget to check out the podcast on digestion and on sleep. We'll also have one on stress as well, linked down below. And remember, fat loss is a marathon, not a sprint. So do have that patience. And if you need any help, then just reach out to us. And if you are wondering, do they really have what it takes? Then talk to any of our 3,000 plus clients and they will let you know that we do. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Happy New Year and happy 2025.
Let's do it.
Catch you in the next one.